Hello and welcome. This is Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. This video is about data modeling and kind of the blueprint of the lab assignment. So, before we really write any database related code, we must map the structure. Okay. And so as far as the requirements in the lab assignment, we're going to be moving away from them abstract requirements to a more concrete entity relationship diagram, okay, and also a functional Mongo database schema as well. So the mission is actually, building an issue tracker, right? The software development is complicated. To manage the reality of bugs, bugs or issues, whatever you want to call them. We are building an issue tracker to record, track, and resolve software problems, right? So here's a depiction of an actor who has a work item, and based on that, they're going to fix, test, or close a bug, right? So the actor is kind of our user, right? Developers, QAs, managers, whatever that interact with the system, okay? And they have different kinds of roles. They do different things. The work item is bugs that track issues. And, it could be an unclassified bug. It could be a closed bug where the user may close a bug, may work on a bug, etc. Right? And then the workflow is assigning priority, tracking hours, adding comments, and running test cases. Okay. So kind of to understand the entity relationship diagram, kind of the blueprint of that. So as an example, you wouldn't pour concrete without a plan, right? When you build a house, you start with the foundation first, right? So an entity relationship diagram is the architectural blueprint, right? It allows us to discuss structure without code syntax, okay? And then, then once we have that, right, the implementation happens only after the design is finalized. So for this lab, we're going to use Draw.io to create a visual map before we do our implementation. So the three pillars of a entity relational diagram, you have your entities, you have your attributes, and you have your relationships. So your entities are the nouns, right? The things that we're storing, we store users, we store bugs, right? And then we also have what's called the attributes, right? These are kind of like the has a, right? Has a type relationship. So entities has an email, like a user, I should say. A user has an email, has a role, right? A bug, right? It's going to have a title, right? Title for your bug. A bug is closed, right? So different adjectives, different attributes of these entities, right? Relationships. Relationships are the verbs, right? A user can create a bug, right? A developer fixes a bug, right? A user closes a bug, right? Etc. So them are the different relationships. So important thing, just remember the three pillars. You have entities, you have attributes, and you have relationships. So reading lines, cardinality, right? Answering the question, how many? So association. So what's the association between a user and a bug? A single user can create multiple bugs, right? Now, for this lab, this assignment, we're not going to have many one-to-one relationships. One-to-one relationships are, let me give you an example that we're kind of not using though, but let's just say a user has a location, okay? Maybe you have a separate location entity. Let's just say we had a separate location entity, and a user has a location, right? Is in a location, and maybe that location's a separate entity. So it's a one-to-one, one user to one location, right? But we don't really have a lot of that here. A lot of the stuff we're doing here, there's more, usually a lot of one-to-many relationships, okay? Some are many-to-many, but, that's more relevant for us than a single one-to-one relationship. So the modern design dilemma. So unlike SQL, Mongo database requires a strategic choice based on data dependence. So you have like normalization versus denormalization, right? And a normalization type, right? Decision on how you want to model your data. Basically, you have an entity A and an entity B, right? You keep data separate, when entities are independent of each other. So, for like a user and a user can survive independently of a bug. A user and a bug can be are makes sense for them to be separate entities, right? They're not reliant on each other. So in this case, though, over here, so you may want to and we'll look at this here in a minute. But let's just say, demortalization is you have a child entity that's embedded right into your parent entity. Okay, and so for us, we'll be looking at some bugs where we might have bug comments. Okay, and so a bug comment is going to be dependent on that bug, right? If that bug's no longer there, that bug comment really doesn't make sense. So in that case, we can kind of embed that in there, right? All right. So referencing, the independent entities. So users versus bugs, right? So we have a user collection. It's going to have multiple users, right? They're going to have different attributes, name, email, etc. And then all have a bug collection, right? A bug collection will have an ID, a title, a status, an author ID. So this author ID, that's how it links to the user, right? By who created this, right? A user created this. Assigned to an ID. So the user that creates a bug, okay, can be different than the user who's assigned to the bug, right? A user that creates a bug could be a manager, could be a systems analyst or a tester, different roles like that. And usually, a lot of times, the bugs are assigned to developers, right? And that would be an author ID would be different than the assigned to ID, right? So a user can exist even if they have zero bugs. It's just kind of saying the reason about it being an independent entity here is because the user itself can survive, can live without having bugs, right? So there's not such a tight relationship where a user, a user and a bug, has a tight relationship where they can't survive independently of each other, right? So in this case, a user can exist even with zero bugs. A bug is a distinct work item, okay, and it's moved between users. They are independent entities. So another way is obviously the embedding, right? The dependent entity. So bugs containing comments. So in this case, here you've got on the left-hand side here, you've got a bug document, and you have an embedded array of comments, right? So these comments are all comments about this bug, right? If this bug was gone, comments couldn't survive. These bug comments couldn't survive because these bug comments are about this specific bug, right? So it's a much tighter relationship, okay? Much tighter relationship. So in object-oriented programming concepts, this kind of a strong ownership is actually kind of called composition. I don't know if you've heard of that before, right? So, the child strictly belongs to the parent, cannot exist independently. So if the parent is deleted, the child is going to be deleted too, right? That's how we will, we can model it so that when we delete a bug, it's going to delete those comments as well, right? Because there's a strong ownership there. It doesn't make sense for those comments about that bug to exist when that bug's gone. Okay. The master plan. So here's kind of the schema that I was going to go ahead and kind of create. Originally all this stuff I was going to actually use that concert as database example, And I started doing that. Started doing a presentation. I said, maybe it make I'm kind of wanted to help the students out a little more. So I'm actually going to come in and we're just going to go ahead and create this. And this can be, you can do some things a little differently than what I do. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Okay, there's flexibility there. Now, some of the requirements in the labs are going to expect some certain things to be there, but you can, every semester students do things a little bit differently, and that's allowed and encouraged as well. So, but this is kind of what I'm going to go ahead and create in the using the Draw IO tool. Okay, and then you're going to have to recreate. You're going to have to do it as well, and turn that in as part of your assignment. And like I said, it's okay for it to be a little bit different. So the central actor in the system is basically the user, right? And the user could have different roles. It could be a developer, a business analyst, a quality analyst, a product manager, technical manager. And you can create additional, if you want additional roles besides this, you can do that as well, okay? This isn't like you have to only have these roles, but there are some requirements within these labs and the final project that kind of are looking for these things because it has some rules around these. So these are should be kind of your base ones that you have. If you want to add some additional ones, I've seen students have like front end developer, back end developer, things like that. And in the real world, that's usually a lot, a lot more common to have things broken down a little bit more, right? Entity focus the bug, right? The central work item, right? As opposed to the user is kind of the center actor in the system, right? Whereas the bug itself is kind of the work item, right? We work on the bugs, right? We update the bugs, we close the bugs, etc. Right? I do want to mention, it talks about like foreign keys here. Mongo database really, foreign keys really relate to relational databases, primary keys and foreign keys. But with Mongo, it's more like you have references. You're referencing different things, kind of a different concept. Okay, a little bit different. All right. So just this talk about the bug internals. You have a lot of embedded arrays here. It's going to be part of this ERD design. And here's a bug document in the middle here, and the bug document is going to have some embedded test cases, edit history, work logs, and comments. Now, it's okay, though, if you decide and you'd rather create these comments as separate entities. Any of these, edit history, work logs, these can be created as separate entities, okay? And that's up to you. But obviously, if for some reason you delete a bug, you're also going to have to delete the entities that are associated with that bug. So, it's a little more complex than that. I think from a relation standpoint, it makes a lot more sense for all of these to be embedded arrays within a bug document because they belong to that, right? Now, obviously, if you create something very sophisticated, there's a limit on how much you can do within Mongo database. But for our case, for our situation, we shouldn't have a problem with embedding these in there. Okay. So another artifact you're going to need for this assignment is a schema.txt file. So what we're going to do here, we're not really going to build what's considered more of a traditional schema. Now, Mongo database is considered a schema-less database, right? You don't have to have a schema. It's a little different for a relational database. Behind the scenes, you have to actually have a full schema that defines all your relationships and everything on a relational database. But for a Mongo database, you don't necessarily have to have that. Okay, you can, as we've talked about before, you can actually throw any document into a collection. It can be completely unrelated. Now, obviously, in your application, if you're expecting that document to have certain things, it's not going to really be helpful, right? You kind of need to have some consistency in your documents because your application is going to be reading things and expecting certain things, right? But for our schema, we're basically going to be using that just to create our different documents as at least a base set of documents that we can upload to Mongo database. So we have some users and we have some bugs. Okay. And later we can always add additional documents. And once we do get, and you can add additional documents right within Postman, right? When we get things all set up. Okay. Right there within Postman. And also eventually we'll have a front end that we can add a new bug, right? We can add new users. We can register users, log in with users, all those different functions, right? But kind of back to this schema. Our schema here is not going to be like a Mongo database does have a schema as far as kind of like rules on everything that, you know, it defines them. So, but for our purposes, we're going to kind of do a kind of a loose type schema. And it's basically, we're just going to create the documents, okay? We're going to create the documents that we're going to use. So what this slide is really about is really about indexing, okay? So indexes in Mongo database are special data structures used primarily to improve the efficiency and speed of data retrieval operations. They allow Mongo database to locate documents quickly without having to scan every document in the collection. Okay, by using index, you can actually create it where you don't that Mongo doesn't have to look at every single document. Okay, and it's kind of known that scan of every doc it's called a collection scan within Mongo. Okay, but if they have to read everyone, obviously read every document, it's very slow, especially for large data sets. For us, not so much, right? But we need to learn and understand it because in most cases, if you're working on a Mongo database project and at a company, usually your data is going to be much more extensive, much bigger data set, right? Let's see what else about indexes. And as far as indexes, besides just speed, like accelerating the queries, right? Also, you kind of it helps with improving the sort performance, right? So if a query uses a sort operation on an index field, Mongo can return the results directly from the index, avoiding expensive in-memory sorting. Okay. Also enforcing uniqueness. So unique indexes ensure that the index fields do not store duplicate values across different documents. Okay. So Mongo automatically creates a unique index, right? That underscore ID field for every collection by default. Efficient aggregation, which we'll talk about more. So indexes can help optimize aggregation pipelines that involve filtering, like doing like the dollar match or dollar sort or dollar group. Okay. So them are some other benefits and reasons for indexes. Okay. All right. So like here on this example, you got unique index on email, prevents duplicates. And that's just talking about here, the assign to ID, fast lookup for my bugs, etc. Okay. So here's kind of our plan for this lab. Exercise 1's the design. We're going to use draw.io to map the entities, relationships, and cardinality. Okay. And then you want to go ahead and put that ERD. You want to put both the draw.io file and also an image, a PNG image in your ERD folder. Okay. And then the next thing we will do is we'll go ahead and write a schema.txt that will basically we'll use to generate the collections, and we'll add at least 2 documents per collection. All right, and then kind of the third part third part is going to be the interaction, writing the queries, and manipulating the data, right? And so we're going to save that in like a queries.txt file and manipulate.txt file, right? And this is just for your grading purposes, right? This isn't needed for the application itself, but just for grading of this lab, right? That's these outputs will be for. Okay, so next we're going to do the draw IO right now, and we're going to go from there. Okay. So first we go to drawio.com, okay, and this is a free open source diagramming tool that we can use. And the good thing about it is, you know, there's no cookies, they don't track you and everything like almost every other website does. So that's good. Now, when you do click this, you're going to see a different URL in here, and that's because actually they've kind of merged some things together. So, so if you go ahead and click Start here, that's what you want to do. Is come in here, hit Start, and as you can see, it's going to say app.diagrams.net. Okay, but it still is Draw.io. So just if you kind of wonder what's going on there, this is what's expected. Okay, so here will be your you know, here's your, basically, you know, your area for creating your diagram. And I'm just going to make mine a little bigger so I can see it a little better. So the things we'll kind of be doing in here is we're going to be using things over here on the left. Okay. Most of it, basically, pretty much everything here from the entity relation here. Okay. This is primarily what we'll be using in here. Okay. And also what you'll need to do is once you create one, two different things you'll need to do here is file, and you want to save this. Okay. And so when you save as, it'll ask you where you want to save it to. Okay. Obviously you want to give it a name, but it's going to save it as a draw.io file. So obviously you don't want to give this a different name here, right? So I'm just going to call this issue tracker. Just kind of saving it before we even really do anything, right? Where do you want to save it? Well, actually, it doesn't really help that much when we don't have anything, because it's going to ask you to save it. You can save it to a Google Drive, or you can just download it. Obviously, there's nothing going to be there at this point, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I'm just pointing out kind of the two different things you're going to want to do here. You're going to want to save this. And the other thing is when you do get this done, the other thing you're going to want to also do, and I'll show you this, is you're going to want to do export as a PNG. Okay. And so you can export that, and you can just export that to your download folder as well, and then put those in the Lab02-02 folder for grading purposes. Okay. All right. So like I said, on the left-hand side here, you should have this all available to you when you come in here. If you don't, click on More Shapes, okay, and you can select them. Here it already selected. For some reason, if it's not selected, you can select that, hit Apply, and then you should have it, okay? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and you just click it, and it's going to create kind of this table like this, right? Now, a lot of these have been kind of created more from a relational database type of design, right? But so we're going to kind of make some changes to it for Mongo so much, right? We don't have rows, right? We don't have rows and columns like a database does, right? And we don't have actually primary keys as well, right? So for us, we're just going to go ahead and change this to user. Right? And so when we build this thing, we're looking at this from kind of an object standpoint. So each one of these, you don't really want this to be plural. This probably should just be a singular, right? It's a user. Each one of these kind of represents a user, right? Now, when you call your collections itself, you may want to call that users collection because, it's actually a whole group of users, right? But this is just a single user This is going to be all the attributes it has, and then we're going to, work on our other entities, and then we're going to actually work on some of the relational mappings for that. Okay. All right. So here, kind of the first thing we want to kind of do is a unique ID. Well, we know for a Mongo database, it's like an underscore ID, right? So in here, you click on this, and you kind of double click to highlight that, right? And you can just hit the back key or whatever. And we're going to do underscore ID, and then we do colon, and then put in object ID, because in Mongo we have object IDs, right? Now, I know this is kind of underlined, so it's kind of a little bit hard to read, but actually, this is an underscore ID because that's how it is in Mongo, right? Another thing is we really, technically, we don't really want to leave this here because it's not really, we don't really have primary keys, even though sometimes people talk about it in, just kind of in reference, but we don't really have a primary key, right? Not in Mongo database. So then the next thing we have, let's look at all our different fields that we have. We can look at our requirements, and we had email, password, full name, given name, family name, and role, right? So here, once again, you're going to highlight this and start typing email, colon, and then type in string. So basically it's our attribute, and then our type, right? And then here, we can type in password, colon, and that's also a string. And here we can do full name. Now, once we get to this, you need more rows here. So what you do in this case is there's a little arrow over here, right? You might have to click over here a little bit to see this. You might have to click a little bit. This is just one of those skills. You play with this for a while, you learn how to use it. But there's this little arrow over there. And sometimes you got to play around so it'll find it. You click on this, it's going to create another row, right? And then here we want to go ahead and do given name. Helps if I can spell. All right. Click the arrow again, and then instead of given name, and you can always click in that too to get rid of it, partial. Family name is also a string. And then we have one more. Right? And that is going to be a role. Okay. So we have our user entity created already. ID, we have email, password, these are all strings. That looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our bug here. So I'm going to drag it over there, or click it over here, right? Do the same thing. And so now we want to go ahead and change the name for this one to bug. And it's good to use kind of uppercase. It's kind of an entity, kind of an object that you kind of want to use the uppercase letter to start it out. Okay. And then once again here, kind of the same thing. We're going to just do an underscore ID, colon, and then object ID, and we'll go ahead and get rid of that. And then we want to start working on all of our different attributes. We have a bug, right? We have a title, a description, steps to reproduce. We have right? Then we have like an author ID. And so the author ID will be associated to this user, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and pause and create this. And then I'll show you when I get done. so I can just save some space on the recording, and then we'll talk about it. So let me go ahead and pause this, and I'll go ahead and create this. Okay, in this one, so obviously, the bug has all these different attributes, title, description, etc. Some things that are a little different here is the user one had really just basically all strings except for its object ID, right? So this one here, the bug has strings. It also has an object ID, right? And this is actually a reference to our user. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. Here we got some date one. We got a few different date ones. So we have a created at date. We have a classification. We have an assigned to, which is another object ID. Also, we'll talk about that as far as the reference, the relationship between that and the user. We have a fixed at date. We have a string for the release version and a date for close that date. And we also have is closed a Boolean, right? A Boolean for that one. So before that, let's before I really look at the relationships here, I want to kind of go ahead and create the other entities. So we're going to have these embedded entities as well, right? So we'll have one for what? Comments, test cases, work logs, and edit history. So here we'll just go ahead and create that right in here, which will be comments. And we're going to have an array, right? This is going to be comments, and we're going to create them over here on the right-hand side. We're going to create these entities. Even though they're going to be embedded in here, we're still going to create them just so we don't have this monstrous bug with a whole bunch of stuff in here. We'll create them out here, and we'll just say that they're embedded, okay? Just for readability purposes. So we'll have comments, and then we'll also have we need test cases. And then work logs as well. And also edit history. All right. And so all four of these are embedded documents. So these stand out a little more. Our comments, test case, workflows, and edit history. What we can do is kind of we'll put a little diamond over here. Okay, so let's go over here on the left-hand side under General. You can just click on a diamond. It's going to be real big at the beginning, but we'll make it smaller here. Let's just move it over here to make it smaller, so we can fit it in there. And we'll just kind of make this real small little diamond here. Okay. Then we can take this in here and drop it right there for the comments. And I'm just going to, then I can go ahead and over here on the right-hand side, you have different styles and stuff, all right? So we can go ahead and I'm going to just go ahead and choose, you can do fill or not fill. I'm going to do fill. I'm just going to choose this color here, right? And so that went and put that there, and I'm going to copy that. And drop that one here. Oh. Okay. All right. Okay. So let me make this a little smaller. So before we kind of start doing our other little entities over here, which is basically comments, test cases, work logs, and edit history, I want to talk a little bit about our relationship between our user and bug here. So we have the author ID, right? And this author ID is actually an ID of a user and also an assigned to ID, right? Now, for a bug to exist, right? For a bug to exist in the first place, it has to have an author, right? This assigned to ID, right down here, a bug can exist without an assigned to, right? This field's going to be there, but it doesn't have to be populated with a value because it can be populated later, right? For a bug to even exist, it has to have an author. Somebody had to create this bug, right? A user had to create this bug. So for this bug to exist, this would have to be populated. Whereas this one here, not necessarily at the beginning, later on, actually you could create a bug and it could maybe somebody could call back and, you know, maybe somebody reported a bug and say, hey, you know what, I was wrong, this or that. And you end up closing, deleting the bug, and it's never even assigned to, right? So there's different possibilities there, right? But these relationships are going to be a little bit different here. So one author, you know, must exist for every bug, right? So down here in our entity relations, there's a whole bunch of different ones here to choose from. And so these are usually the one at the beginning. You'll see the one-to-one, one-to-many. We come down here and we've got the others where we got one mandatory to many mandatory, right? So basically in our case, all right, we have at least we're going to have one user for sure, right? And a user could be an author of multiple bugs. So we're going to choose this one mandatory to many mandatory, right? So I can just click on that, and you have to move it up. So you don't necessarily have to always put it in the exact place. It does help a little bit, though. And you can just put it to this thing in general, or you can kind of move it up to here. But we're going to have more than one here. I guess I could just kind of do them both. So this object, so user's object ID is going to be author. So this is a one, right? One mandatory. So one user can have multiple, be authors of multiple bugs, right? Now our other one here, though, is going to be the assigned to, right? So not every user is necessarily going to be assigned to a bug. So as far as our entity relationship, we're looking for 0 to many, right? So that was one to many, one optional, many, right? Did I miss it? One here. One optional to many. Okay, and that's the one we want here on that one. So I'm just going to drag it over here. And then, so this one goes right there. And it doesn't have to always line up precisely. Okay. So I'm going to do that like that one. The problem with that is sometimes, yeah, you can't always get it where you want it to be. So once again, this is one to many for an author ID, and this is one optional, right, to many for assigned to ID. What we should probably also do is just kind of put, just for readability purposes, put in REF for reference, right? Ref. And we'll put in ref here. Usually this is where like you put the primary keys, you know, the foreign keys, but a little different within Mongo. So you just use ref. So you know that this is referring to something else, right? This is referring to the object ID of the user, and the same thing with this one as well, right? Okay. So next we want to go ahead and create our different embedded entities. So we have one for comments, test cases, work logs, edit history. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of copying. I'm gonna need to make this a little smaller, fit everything. Okay, so comment. Move this over maybe a little bit. So comments the embedded one here. So kind of what's our relationship with that one? Kind of the same situation. Because this is our relationship. This is always going to be basically an array, right? So you're going to have a comments array that's going to associate to this, right? So there's going to be one of these arrays is going to associate to the embedded. Could have multiple comments, right? Multiple comments. So this is going to be the kind of the same relationship as this top one here, right? So we're going to go ahead and grab that one. So actually, what we're really wanting to do here is we want to do one mandatory to many optional, right? So the comments are kind of optional, right? But comments, this thing here has to point to at least one. So what we're going to do is here, we're going to choose this one here, right? Let me see. That looks good. That looks right. Okay. So then what we're going to do is put that up here and then put this over here. Nope, we can put this to where comments are, right? There you go. So this is one mandatory to multiple optional to many, right? And so that's going to be the relationship for each one of these for test cases, work logs, and edit history as well. So I'm just going to pause the video and drop these other ones in there. So for each of these to exist, right, comment, test case, work log, and an edit history, right, it must have at least one, right? It must be at least one comment, one test case, one work log. It must exist at least one, right? It has to be in here at least one time for these to exist, right? So without this embedded thing here, this can't exist without it being embedded here, right? So just kind of a little different way to look at these, okay? But here's that. So you can go ahead and create the same thing if you like. If you want to make it a little different, that's fine as well. I just kind of want to give you something to start with. I know because this can be a little bit challenging. So, all right. So now we have this. The next part is we want to go ahead and create some data, right? We want to create what's kind of called a schema. Like I said before, a true schema is a little different. It's kind of more definitional, and you can kind of use those. But Mongo's very loose, and you don't even have to kind of have a schema at all. But from our perspective, really, a schema is just going to be just some loading of some basic data, so to speak. Okay. Sorry, I just forgot to mention. So after you get this completed, and probably should do this more than once, just in case something goes wrong. But you want to save this draw IO file, and to do that, you can just do here file save as, right? And I think I already had one from before, but whatever. I'm just going to do download. It'll overwrite the other one, I'm sure. Issue tracker. Hit OK, and that'll download. Ask you if you want to download it, right? Just hit save. And then the other thing here, you do file. This is the second part. You want the PNG as well, an image of it. Here you come down to export as a PNG, right? And you can just accept all those defaults there. Hit export. It's going to ask you where, right? In here, that's up to you where you want it to go. You can just download it, hit OK. and then save it. And then you can go ahead and drop that in the folders as needed for the lab assignment. Okay, now that we've done that, now we'll go ahead and work on our schema document. Okay, I'm just going to go into my Lab02-02 folder. Work from there. You can do this wherever you want. You know, maybe you just want to create this in, you know, Notepad++ or whatever. So I'm just going to create a document called schema, gma.txt. So there's different ways for us to get seed data in a database. We can just go into Compass and create the database and create, just the shell collections without any data. And then we can just go in there and add documents. And there's various methods to doing this. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create, like I said, we got a .text file here, but we're actually going to be putting JavaScript in here. We could call this whatever, but even though this says a text file, we're going to actually be putting like JavaScript in here. And then when we run this thing, we can run this thing in a Mongo shell, okay? And it'll go ahead and generate, even if we don't have a database created for the issue tracker yet, right? Which you probably don't. If you don't even have one yet, it'll go ahead and create one. And actually, if you ran this again, if you run it once and if you came back and did it again, because maybe later on, actually, you want to kind of, flush everything out and start over, it'll go ahead and recreate it. It'll get rid of everything that was there and recreate it from this file right here, okay? So let's go ahead and start. Let me start getting this going here. So some of the things we're going to be doing here, you're not going to be doing like later on. This is kind of just for seed data. Because we want to kind of, we'll have to do like what's called like db.getSibling database. And I'm going to be passing that, the name of the database we want to call it, okay? So, and then there's some other things that are just going to be a little bit different. This ain't something that we'll be doing all the time. This is just kind of an initial one. Later on, though, you might use this to repopulate. But like I said, there's all kinds of different options on adding files and creating all of this. So this is just kind of one way to go ahead and seed that database. So here we're going to switch to the database. We're using this GetSibling database, okay, for this issue tracker. Then we want to go ahead and clean up the old data just in case there is some. So we're going to drop the users and drop the bugs. Then we want to create the IDs for different users. This is just a different way to do it. We're going to just, based on 3 different users, we're going to just do an object ID for each one of them, okay? And this will create those object IDs that are used in Mongo. Okay, and then we want to go ahead after that. We're going to go ahead and start creating users, right? So to do that, we go like a db.users and we do like an insert many. Okay, so step 4 here, create users, db users, insert many. So we're going to start with an ID. We're going to use Alice first, right? And then we're going to just put in our data: email, password, given name, family name, etc. All the way to role. We'll give her a role of business analyst, I guess. So let's go ahead and do that. And so each one of these you'll have to end in a curly brace and then give it a comma after that, right? So that was the first one. Now we're doing Bob. And later on, this where it says password, we're going to actually use bcrypt that will encrypt the password. Okay. And for Bob here, I think what we can give Bob here, I think we'll give him developer role. And then we want to do one more here. We're going to do Carol. Kind of the same thing, you can cut and paste and, whatever works for you. You just need to make sure you structure everything right. And this will be a quality analyst. We'll make her quality analyst here. Okay, so then what we did here was we kind of, ended this with our semicolon. So this was the whole one here, right? The whole insert many, started up here and ends right here, right? Then after that, now we want to have to do is we're going to create some bugs, okay? And what we kind of did here on this is we have the object ID for Alice, Bob and Carol, we have their own object ID. So we can just use these variables, okay? And this is just for initial C data. Another way is, you can always create this stuff and then go like right into Compass and change those IDs, add them, whatever you need to do, okay? And there's gonna be times that, to change little things, you just go in Compass, make those changes. And obviously in the shell, you can always do any kind of updates as well, okay? So next we want to do, we want to create bugs. So what we're going to do there is we're going to do db.bugs, right? Database.bugs. Bugs is the name of our collection. And we're going to do an insert many, right? Up here we did a db users insert many, right? So the db is named just a database. The reason it knows we're in a database is because we did this, okay? So when we do this, well, we haven't ran this yet, but when we do this, it actually sets that to the database being issue tracker, okay? If it doesn't exist, it's going to create it when it runs, okay? So now this DB is actually issue tracker dot users dot insert many, right? You just use, but once you do a use, you always do DB just like that. It's going to kind of replace it internally. That's how it does it, both here and when you're using the shell and other things as well, okay? All right, so we're here now. So now we want to go ahead and create those bugs. So we're gonna have like a bug one here, just different ones. And like I said, you can cut and paste or whatever's easiest for you. Just need to kind of get the IDs, especially when we start talking about the author IDs and stuff like that. You want to make sure that you assign it somewhere. You can actually have it there and you can come back and add that. So that's always an option here, okay? And for the date, we use new date, right? New date will create a new date for us. So we're just kind of setting this up, kind of made a list. So this is one where we ain't gonna have any comments, test cases, work logs, edit history. We're just gonna leave this empty, okay? And what we're doing here is we're not really, just to simplify things, I know in our ERD we have all those embedded ones, right? We're not gonna include all that stuff this time, okay? So we're gonna kind of make this simpler just to get through this lab. Later on, we're gonna change our comments, our test cases, our work logs, and our edit history to kind of include all of those different things we had in our ERD, right? I could bring that up, I guess. Let me see if I still have that somewhere around here. So, we had all of these. We're not embedding all of this, okay? We're just doing some comments, test cases, work logs, and edit history. We're doing just kind of the bare bones for now, just so we can test it. Later on, we're going to expand these to include all of this, okay? All right, let me continue here. Let's see, where was I? There's edit history. So yeah, we're about done with this, okay? So we just need to do the second one. We're going to do bug 2 here. Give it a description of application crashes when clicking pay. And this one, we'll add some other things here for this one, such as some comments, test cases, and stuff like that. So I just kind of made some so that they would work for certain queries, the assignment queries. So it's going to require like ones where you got some stuff empty or whatever, right? So like I said, this stuff here, these comments and these test cases, this we're going to do this a little differently in this eventually. We're just kind of making this simple for right now. Okay. I didn't want to get too in depth on this stuff. I was originally, but I just said, maybe we'll hold off. Okay. So we're going to be doing a few more bugs here. We'll do bug 3 and bug 4. All right. And so, one thing in here, like I said before, like because of the way Mongo works, you can have different documents, different things. If you're missing something, it's not a big deal. It's still going to save it. As long as your syntax is right, it's still going to save it. The only thing is when you try to access certain things, if it's not there, then you're going to get different results, right? So that's the only thing. Or if you have something in your codes expecting it to be one thing and it's something else, you can have some challenges as far as that's concerned as well. Okay. So here this one we're just going to keep all blanks too. So this will come up for ones where we're looking for something where we don't have anything in there. And then what we want to really do here is we want to go ahead and create some indexes. So we talked about indexes before, right? So we're going to create index for users, and we're going to create an index for bugs. So for our users, we're going to go ahead and do one for email, all right? We'll review what this does here. So we're going to we created one here for the users, right? Create index. And so what this does here, the email one, basically what that does is this simply means sort in ascending order, okay, from A to Z, right? If you would have used a negative one, it would be in descending. So if you want to, by default, this is how you want to sort them so that when you do like a find on something, it depends on how things will be enforced there. Okay, so if you did a -1, like I said, that would be in descending order. Okay, as far as the sort, if you do it as a 1 here, a positive number, right? A 1, it will be in ascending order. All right, and the unique true. So what this does, it rejects any new document. Okay, it rejects any new document that tries to use an email address that's already exist in the collection. Okay. Okay. And then I'm just going to print this out just to make sure that this all works. So we're going to be running this command line. All right. So now we have that. We have this under our schema.txt. All right. It's saved automatically. And this, like I said, there's just one way to do this. Okay. Let's see. We got 3, 4 bugs, right? And then our indexes. All right. So the next thing I want to do is want to go to, you need to go to Atlas. I think I'm already logged in. You need to go to Atlas first and log in. Okay. So, let me log out of a couple, let me at least get out of Compass here. So you need to come into Atlas, you need to sign in, right? You have to sign in to your Mongo, your account, right? So you have to go through that process. I'm going to send you probably a number by email, right? So once you get in here, all right, you can go ahead and go to your clusters here. Here's what I called mine. I think by default says cluster 0, whatever, okay? I'm not sure if you created one and more than one. You really only need one. I just have some extra ones for previous classes and other stuff. So you can come in here and then just go ahead and click connect here, okay? And it's going to give you different options. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the shell here. So you click on the shell, okay? And down here, it's going to give you your login, okay? So you can copy that, okay? I'm going to hit done here, and we can make this look, okay? And now we want to open up a PowerShell here, or it could be a command prompt is fine either way. All right, and then we come in here and just paste your thing, right? Right click, you just right click on this, right? You just use the right click and it'll automatically put it in there. Then you need to enter your password. So you need to make sure that you have your password saved. Let me go grab my password. And remember, the password that you're entering here is different than the password. There's two different passwords here. There's the one that you use to log into the Mongo, right? Like in Atlas. And then there's one for the database, right? For the database you created, right? For the cluster you created to log in, right? So here you want to go ahead and use that one here. To do that, you can copy it from wherever you have it, and you just right click, right? If I just right click here, once you copy it in your mouse, you right click, it's going to just copy it right there, hit enter. Okay, and now you're going to log in. Oh, actually, I want to log out because I want to show you something else here. Okay, first what you really want to do here, so wherever your code is, okay, Reveal and File Explorer, I'm going to go right to this directory. So I'm just copying the path to this directory here, right? And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to just do a CD. And the reason I'm doing this is because this is where our schema is, and this is the easiest way to load it, just to go to, so CD to that. Then let's come back here again and do this command, okay? Now I'm going to enter my password here, because now what will happen is you're in that directory, so then we can just refer to this schema text file. Otherwise, you have to give it the full path. You can still do that. You can do the full path, / schema.txt. But if you're already in that directory, it's going to find it in that directory, okay? So just right click on copying that. And then I'm logged in now, okay? So even though you're seeing this, it still it knows that you're in that specific directory, okay? And so the next thing here, let me go grab something. This is the one we want. I was doing something else, that's why I got a different name here. But this is all you need to do. Load, okay? You're logged into the database, all right? You're logged in. You load schema.txt, that's what we called it, right? Make sure I spelled everything right. schema.txt, okay? And like I said, since we changed the directories, we're in this same directory where this is. Okay, now we can just run this right here. So we just hit our enter key. It's going to run that whole schema file. Let's just kind of take another look. So what it's going to kind of come in here and do, I think I might have taken some things out, but this will do this very quickly. Okay, it's going to go and switch to this database if it doesn't exist. Okay, if it doesn't exist, it's going to create it. Okay, and actually for me, I'll show you something just in case because sometimes you start getting into this, you'll be in it. Like I'm already in here, right? And I've already created some things, right? What it's going to actually end up doing though, okay? And actually, just for the heck of it, why don't I just delete a couple things? Remove this document, hit delete. Okay. So I just want to kind of show you, just so you realize that, because like you're going to have to refresh this, especially if you already got Compass open, okay, you're gonna have to do a little bit of refreshing. So right now, what am I? I'm looking at the bugs here, right? And I got two of them here, all right. So like I said, what this is gonna do is first, it's gonna go ahead. Now, if I didn't have this already created, I already have this, and you can call this whatever you want, right? This is what I'm calling issue underscore tracker. You can call this whatever you want. It will create this, okay? And if it is already there, it's going to drop these collections. It's actually going to delete those collections, okay? And it's going to recreate all of this, okay? So if you ever do some things and you don't want to run this again, right? So be careful, don't run this again if you don't, you're not wanting to. Obviously, you can always run it again if you need to. Early on, it's not a big deal. As we proceed later on, start getting your data like you want it, and you want to be careful not to do that. All right. So we're back to our prompt here. All right. So we're doing this load schema.txt. And like I said, if you started out and you CD to that directory, you should be good. And I hope this works. And let me hit enter here. And that's how quick that went. Database seeded with test data for all queries. True. Very quick, right? Does not take long. So what we can do is let me go back to Compass here. And like I said, I already had this here, but what it actually ended up doing, even though I'm seeing these two records here, I'm going to refresh this and it's going to be back to 4, right? Because it actually dropped these collections and rebuilt them based on that data we have in that file, okay? But the way it works, it's not going to tell you this because this is just kind of cached. So if I just come up here to the refresh, and I'm just letting you know this, because if you're doing some things, changing some things, even if you're writing some stuff, we get to the point where we got our application built, like our React app, and you've got a front end and everything, you make some changes to it. And if you're also looking at it in Compass, okay, or even if you're doing some stuff from Postman, even if before we get to having a rack front end, you're doing some things from Compass, you're saving data, you're doing some things, you're going to come in here, and if you just have the same screen, it's going to be cached, right? So I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to hit this little refresh here, and so we created 4 bugs, right? So it should, it shouldn't say 2 anymore, it should say 4. And so there you go. So these are all the bugs we just created, okay? And basically everything's here as well. I don't think you have to refresh this, but you might. I'd have to check that actually. I think since you clicked on it and it wasn't already opened, then it would just grab the latest. Okay. So, and you can always come in here. So like, let's say you're testing some queries and your data doesn't line up right. So most of your data to line up right based on the bugs, right? I think this data should pretty much cover all the little test cases that's for the assignment for the queries, right? But if you do need to, you can always come in here and change anything you want, right? You just click on anything, right? You click on this, it's going to go that line. You can change anything, right? So is closed here. I can change this to true, all right? So once I did change that to true, do I got an E at the end there? I didn't, did I? So true. That's why it was red, actually, right? It knows that that's not right. It's letting you know that. So it's a Boolean, right? So that's why it was actually red there. So then I just click update, and that's going to update it. So you can always do that. You can add new rows. Like if I come here and I want to add another comment, right? Add another, right? Okay. Like I said, the upload thing, that's just one option, okay? You can always do this as well. But, you do have to turn in at least a basic schema document, right? So that's kind of part of the requirements. But you can always come in here, make any changes to anything. I'm going to update this one, okay? You can always add another document as well, right? Right here is add data. So you're in bugs, right? And you can even do this too if you want. You can actually take and copy all of this. How did I do this before? No. Click over here. Copy on clipboard. So it's just copying this whole object here. The whole thing is, though, it's going to have this ID too. So if you just want to go add data, right? Insert a document, it's going to have this. So you are going to need this, okay? Because you want a new one because you can't create a... So I copied that all over here. And as you can see, this is the one that got copied. So you don't want this one, right? You don't want that. Let me see. Yep, you don't want this one. All right. Did I do that right? Yes. All right. And then here, so this is the new ID with the other ID. I don't even know. It won't let me move this. Let me try that again. So I'm going to clone this document. No, you can just do this. I think you can just do this and change. No, you can't do that. I don't really use this all that much, to be honest with you. From here, I usually use the command line I got. But you can, like I said, you can copy this to clipboard, do add new data, insert document. So it's going to have this here, right? And then you can add your other data. And it wasn't happy with this. Unexpected white space, line 22. I don't know. So I don't want to get hung up on that, but you know, you can do that. Just play. Actually, probably the best thing, take it out of here, put it in maybe like Notepad++, make sure everything looks right, and then put it back in here. So that's that. What else did I want to mention here? I guess that's about it here. So this will kind of pretty much give you all the data that you need to work on those queries. So we'll kind of be doing that next here. Now, as far as these queries for exercise 3, so we were kind of using the Mongo shell. We just did the mongosh command within like PowerShell or in on a command prompt, right? And just brought it in up there. But you can also do it within Compass as well, okay? So either or, you can continue, but you know, sometimes there's some advantages of doing it here within Compass. And so let's look at this one. First one is list all bugs that your user created. So here's all the different bugs, right? So what the user created is going to be author ID, right? So I'm just going to, to do this, you really have to search on, you have to use the ID, right? So you kind of have to get the ID first. So, and it's saying you create it. We kind of uploaded different ones for different users, Alice, whatever, I forgot even their names here. So Alice and Bob and Carol, right? So we uploaded there. You can put your own name as well. So it doesn't really matter on that. But here is, here's Alice got this one. So she's the author ID. I believe this is Alice, right? Let's go here. Let me look again. So let's see. BD0. Yeah. That's BD3. Let's see, that's assigned to. Yeah. So she's the author ID on this one. Yeah. So Yeah, don't get confused by these numbers. You're looking for the users is going to be the author, right? The author or assigned to, right? So right there is the author ID. So what you can actually do in here is instead of, you can use PowerShell or your command prompt, using that command like we did from Atlas, or you can come in here and click the shell command and it'll come up right into here. And so the first thing you want to do here is use issue tracker, right? All right. And so for that very first command we got, we want to list all bugs that your user created. So we're going to do that first one. I think that was Alice's, right? So what we want to do here is we want to do db dot bug, right? Dot find. Then after find here, we want to do a open parentheses. And then we want to go ahead and do author ID. Make sure you have it right as far as camel case, right? I believe that's right. And here for this one, whenever you're using an object ID, when you're trying to do a find, when you're trying to use those object IDs, you need to do it like this. You need to do object ID and an open parentheses, right? Then go ahead and paste that in there or put it in there, right? So you got author ID. Let's see, does that look good? I think that looks good. And then go ahead and hit enter here. And it was wrong. Let's see. Author ID. That looks right. Yeah, I missed the bugs instead of bug. It should be bugs, right? And there you go. So there's that record. There's actually more than one. Author ID here of this one, and also an author ID of this one, right? So yeah, the important thing on that, you have to make sure that you use the object ID, right? Uppercase O and a uppercase I, object ID, and then put the number within there, right? The ID. All right, let's see what else here. Okay, and the other one is list all bugs that you're assigned to. So basically, you do it almost the same way. You just use the assigned to, whatever that is. Let's just go kind of look at that real quick, I guess, here. Assigned to ID, right? And I don't know if this one, I think some of these records are actually missing something, but that's okay. So I'll change that to that, see if one exists here for that. And yes, it does. So basically, assigned to ID, right? It had a let's see, author ID, it had a different author ID, right? But it was assigned to this one, right? Okay, so there's those two, right? And the next one, and I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just trying to get you started on this. So the next one is a list of all bugs you created and or assigned to, okay? So basically you're going to be doing both of these, but you're going to do them in one statement, okay? And so what I'm going to do on that is I'm not going to do that for you, but I'm going to go over here. And so this is, which guide is this? Let me just close this one. So this is one of the CRUD ones, right? Create, read, update, delete. So we're reading here. And if you come in here and you just search, So a lot of those ors, so that's like an or, right? So all those ors, if you search for like $OR, so here is a $OR. So basically, this is kind of what you do. This is the concert stuff, right? But you just, instead of concerts, it's bugs, right? And instead of genres, it's going to be your author and your assigned, right? So you'll have those right here, all right? And then you give them that object ID, the same object ID, right? So that's basically what you do that for that third one. So, all right. I'm trying to help you without helping you too much on that. I hope that does help a little bit though. List all bugs that are unclassified. So pretty basic there, right? So always when in doubt, look at your data, right? Look at your data, classified, unclassified, right? It's pretty much telling you what to put right there, right? For the other ones, we had to do the object ID, but for this, you just do a find where classification, colon, and then put your unclassified in quotes, right, within your find, and you should be good on that, right? Let's look at a few more here. List all bugs that you created or on a sign. Oh, we already did that. List all bugs that have been approved by a business analyst but are not closed, right? But are not closed. So yeah, that might be a little bit more tricky. List all bugs that's been approved. So and ones that are not closed. So we need to find approved. So classification approved. So we need a catch and it is closed as false. This is one, right? So this is kind of what that's looking for. So obviously in your thing, you want to have a classification of approved, right? But you want for not is closed, right? So I'll go ahead and do this one for you as well here. Down here. This is obviously to clear the screen, just like we do for like Visual Studio Code CLS, right? To clear the screen. So here we want to do db dot bugs. Don't forget the S like I did earlier. Dot find. And then that and that. And then in here you want to do classification. And you want approved. And it always has to be in quotes. And then you put a comma. So this is your searching for, for both, you're doing a find for both these conditions, right? And then is closed. And here's a Boolean, right? So that's the difference. Here, is a string. The classification's a string. Here, is closed is a Boolean, right? So that's what you do on that. Let's hit enter. And that's wrong. Let me see here. So we do the calculate of and is closed to false. Classification is closed. Is false. So that should work. dbbugs.find. Oh, I think I see it now. Capital A for approved here. So you got to always look at those things, right? So we need to change this to capital A. Now we should be good, and there it is. All those little things get you. All those little spelling things, case sensitive things, always get you. Sometimes best to always have everything lowercase. You don't have to worry about it. And then also in your code, when we get to the point where we're doing a front end type stuff, you can kind of change everything over to lowercase just to make sure, right? So there's different ways around that. Okay, so that was that. I'm not going to do a lot more of these. Okay, I guess I can do this one for you as well. Okay, so here we want to go ahead. So we're doing is closed. Is closed is false. Okay. Now the fixed one is just has, and it all depends on how you create your data. And like I said, you are flexible to do things kind of what you want a little bit. In this kind of data, how it's set up is you got a fixed at. So you've got a date, a date object, right? So some of these others don't have anything, right? They don't have any fixed stats. So what you have to do in this case is you're wanting to make sure that to see if this fixed at exists. If this exists, this fixed stat, then you know it's been fixed, right? So what you can do on this one is do db.bugs.find, and then we need to open and close parentheses and a curly brace, and then inside of here, I didn't mean to do that. That actually just went and grabbed everything, didn't it? And then inside this curly brace, what we want to go ahead and do here is do fixed at and colon, and then another curly brace, and then we need to do this to find out if it exists. So we use a dollar, EXISTS, colon, true. Okay, and after that, we're going to put a comma, and then we're going to do is closed, colon, false. Okay, so let me look at this. So we're debugs, at least I got the S on there this time, fixed at, uppercase A, that looks good. Dollar exist equals true, and then is closed equals false. Okay, so this is basically saying, hey, does this fixed at exist in the code at all? All right, and there you go. And this one is fixed at, it exists in the code, and is closed is false. Okay. Let's see here. List all bugs that do not have a test case. Okay. I'm going to let you kind of work on some of these other ones yourself. I will kind of go through this a little bit more myself, and if I see some, I might give you some hints on that. But, a lot of these, and if you look at the guides, I know the guides are on the concert stuff, but it's the same concepts, right? You got your create, read, update, delete. If there's anything that you kind of need to do, like an aggregation pipeline, so where you need to match, you need to sort, you need to do some lookups, that's all right here as well, okay? If you, I already sent you directions. If you want to get the concerts database, you can get that loaded on your, add that database to your cluster, and then you can try some of these out if you want, okay? So, all the kind of all the same answers, all the things you need are kind of in here, but this is for concerts and this is not for the bugs and users, because otherwise I'd just be giving you all the answers to everything, right? So kind of work through this a little bit. Let me know if you have any problems. I will kind of look at some things. If I see a couple that I think need some additional explaining, I will go ahead and follow up with everyone on those. So that's all I have. Please have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Thank you.